All right. Good evening, everyone. It's social distancing at the chamber, also known as happy hour with Hammer. Glenn, we are touring the state. Last night we were in Yuma. Tonight we go to the high country. We go to Flagstaff with some very special guests. Glenn, why don't you introduce our guests this evening?
Well, we're not going to let the coronavirus slow us down. It's our great privilege tonight that we have Julie Pastrick, the head of the Greater Flagstaff Chamber of Commerce, one of the great leaders, not just in the state of Arizona, but one of the great chamber leaders across the country. And my good friend, the swashbuckling Joe Galli, who's a great policy mind, a great advocate. And we just appreciate having you on the show tonight.
Thank you, Glenn.
I had to get in swashbuckling, Joe. You knew that.
As always, we're here. We're hard at work. I think before you get into questions, Julie certainly knows this. Right now, no one is working harder than Chamber of Commerce staff across the state and I think across the country as we look to mitigate the damage from a closed economy. And so we've been all hands on deck. A lot of people have had their activities curtailed, but as Julie can tell you, the entire Greater Flagstaff Chamber team is working very hard to promote our business community.
Well,
Thank you,
Joe, your point's important because I feel like the chamber community across the United States of America is working overtime. We're working together to keep businesses alive and employees as intact as possible. And this is our moment to help with probably the toughest situation this country has faced in a century.
You're exactly right, Glenn. I'm really thankful to you and Garrick and to Joe for being with me on this call and having the opportunity to say a few words about the North Country. What I heard clearly in your remark is overtime. I think everyone's working overtime to understand what losing liquidity means and what can I do next to keep my employees on the payroll. As an employer, how can I make sure my business will be there for my employees? And so Joe and the team at the Chamber have just incredibly, in such a short amount of time, opened 2 new web portals for our members to understand business resources, federal support, state support, all of the wonderful declarations and executive orders our Governor Ducey has been able to put out in such a short amount of time with such significant impact for our businesses and for everyone, workers, employees, families, to get back into the stream of being able to be healthy as families and not lose all income and all hope. So we're just really, we have our feet to the fire. We have tremendous resources, a lot of digital platforms and tremendous advocacy from Joe Galli's business advocacy division that it never sleeps.
What is the latest situation in terms of number of cases and the situation both on the healthcare side and economically right now in the Flagstaff area?
I just posted that this morning on my Facebook page. I hope I can remember, but I know that the hardest hit is the Navajo Nation, the tribal communities, and Page right now for northern Arizona. Coconino County, 50 to 60 cases if you do not add into that the Navajo Nation, because the northern and most western side of the reservation is in Coconino County, as you well know, Glenn. And in addition to that, Yavapai County has very few, and up at the Grand Canyon, very few. So I would say the most significant impact right now with about, Joe, can you answer that, the number of cases on Navajo?
Yeah, Julie, so the number of cases on Navajo is over several hundred. I think the number is over 400 at this point. But we know the Navajo Nation includes 3 counties in Arizona, and those are Apache, Navajo, and Coconino, working obviously east to west. We're most impacted by the spread in Tuba City, which is close to Flagstaff. The Navajo Nation going to a full curfew this weekend, full lockdown for 57 hours. As ordered by their nation president. But Glenn, to your point, we do have a number of cases in Coconino County and in Flagstaff Central. As Julie mentioned, they're a lot lower than what we see on the reservation. We're concerned about our reservation friends, and of course, they have a huge impact on our local economy in northern Arizona. But the Coconino County Health Department and our partners in government have done a great job of addressing the local challenges. We were the first in the state through the county to have drive-through testing, and we're still operating that. That, of course, testing is ramped up statewide thanks to support from the governor's office and from our U.S. senators with federal aid for additional testing in Arizona. But we were really at the front line out of the gate early in mid-March with testing. And so that's been a benefit to us locally. On the economy side, as Julie knows, the local governments issued sort of back-to-back, first the city of Flagstaff, then the county. But the city started on the 16th of March with a curtailment of retail and restaurant activities. That kind of threw everybody for a loop, but we got it, to our credit, this chamber, I mean, what a pleasure to work here and be part of people that are applying solutions to difficult problems. And locally, we've got such a great team here that Julie's got in place. And as a result of that, we were able to, within 12 hours, have 2 new websites up at flagstaffchamber.com, one for business promotions and one for business operational changes. Those have been the go-to, not just in northern Arizona, but for our visitors that come through northern Arizona, whether they're coming from the Midwest or the California, or they're coming up from Phoenix, which we're starting to see. The weather's starting to be beautiful up here in northern Arizona. So now is the height of our kickoff for visitation. We hope we can get people back in the car at some point soon, and they'll be coming up to visit us and stay in our hotels and eat at our restaurants. But getting the economy back open is really a crux for us. But we've managed the last 3 weeks to support our business community in key ways, not just these 2 web pages, but with our social media promotion. And we've been very active. And it's tough on us. You know the irony here. I mean, we are a C6, and so we're standing out on an island, unable to access the business relief. We're out lobbying for our members and navigating the process for them and helping them. We've convened our bank leaders together with a fiscal task force. I mean, we've really gone above and beyond what anyone could do to assist the business here. The challenges are great.
And I'm sorry, when you're talking about assisting business, there was just Senator McSally just held an outstanding town hall with 30,000 people, and one of my favorite economists, Larry Kudlow, the White House top economic guru, was on it. But the Paycheck Protection Program was front and center. And, we're seeing an incredible amount of interest, and just would love to hear in the Flagstaff area what's going on the ground with that program that's at, it's capped right now at $350 billion, but we'd like to see more money in it.
Yeah, if I could, Julie, real quickly, simultaneously, go ahead, Julie.
Go ahead.
So
I just want to say I was on that call too, because of course Senator McSally is just a tremendous aid to Northern Arizona in our military affairs, and I'm a great fan of Larry Kudlow and his incredible economic magic. And to hear his enthusiasm and his optimism, it was just wonderful. And I think that's what we need out of the forecasters and those that are private sector driven. And we do know that numbers and dozens of businesses have been on numerous calls with Congressman O'Halloran, with Senator McSally, with Senator Sinema about the ins and outs of being able to apply for those funds and what it takes, and that the bankers came together at the chamber and were able to work with us beforehand. Right when we were finding out a little bit about the program, they all were working with us and letting us know to send people to them. We started to, through our digital platforms, which have just flourished and grown like crazy during this particular time. And some of them said, quit, don't be announcing this so much. But we have heard from some businesses that have received them already, and we know that dozens and dozens are in the pipeline. We are big fans of hoping that C6 entities will be allowed in this next round of funding because, of course, chambers need that help too. We're lifting the business communities and the businesses in ways that we've never been able to before. And Glenn, I think you said it well at the start of our call, that we're in a relevance period for chambers. This is one of the biggest opportunities for us to really show and deliver outcomes for every type of business. And one of the things that I heard on that call, Glenn, I made a note of, was that the mid-market businesses are going to be served now too. The feds have rolled out that program for 500 to 2,000 employees. That's going to help our hospital and W.L. Gore, a lot of our manufacturers. We're very happy about the middle market being served.
I would just add,
and I might add that we've had a lot of conversation and a lot of one-on-one with our medical center, Flagstaff Medical Center, which is broader Northern Arizona Healthcare, and their CEO is on our board of directors. During a board meeting, this is, I think, a story that everybody would like to hear, and it warms hearts of sorts, that during a board meeting, virtual of course, Flo made a call out to our members for face masks. We're really in a tough spot, she said. I immediately went on the next day after her communication director wrote that response or that request in writing, so I knew exactly what she needed. Within 24 hours, we had a company, Print Thermoforming, who design and make packaging for medical products and are headquartered in Wisconsin, get back and say, hey, we can do that. We're actually working with UW, Divine Mercy Hospital. Well, how many do you need? They asked for 3,000. We were the conduit. They got 2,200, and it just made us all sore. Within 72 hours, that miracle happened. That's what chambers do, connecting resources and being able to connect the dots during times that are hard. I don't think any entity does it as well as AZ Chamber and the smaller local chambers do.
Julie, I love that story because it's solving problems. It's the ingenuity of Americans, and it's chambers connecting these dots with all of our skills. So that's the type of story we need to make sure people are aware of. We're not just sitting back. No, there's no American. Everyone on this call, we're not just hanging around and waiting for the virus to go. We're attacking that sucker. Garrick, I'm sure you have some questions.
Joe, go ahead, and I'll follow up after you're done, Joe.
Yeah, to Glenn's question about how the Paycheck Protection Act is being taken locally, I did have an anecdote. So simultaneously today, while the Senator McSally and the presidential advisor, economic advisor Larry Kudlow call was taking place, this chamber right here in this boardroom was hosting a webinar with the U.S. Chamber of Western Regional Office Representative Executive Director Jennings Imel, who outlined for several dozen Greater Flagstaff Chamber members who logged in today to that webinar. We provided that. We solicited assistance from Jennings Imel, who's really on the front lines with the U.S. Chamber policy team, led by Neil Bradley in Washington, D.C., and understands the legislation and, more important, the rules coming out of Treasury and the rules coming out of the SBA that provide minimum requirements and guidelines for these two important pieces of assistance. One is the the emergency disaster loans, the EIDLs, if you will, wrong acronym, but right acronym, wrong title, sorry, that are coming out of SBA. And then, of course, the Paycheck Protection. So a lot of questions by our small business members. Some of them are through the process and are just waiting on funds. Some are having trouble getting through the process. And it's all happening so quickly, but we're at the front here locally, providing resources to small businesses to help them get through this really tough time.
That's great.
Joe and Julie, that's great to hear what you're doing on behalf of your members. I got to ask, the closure at the Grand Canyon, you are the gateway to the Grand Canyon. I'm curious what you're hearing from your tourism sector regarding closures, and also what the crystal ball looks like to the extent that you can predict for your tourism sector going into warmer weather months. Julie, why don't we start with you?
That's so tough. And we stay as optimistic as we can, but it's been, I've not seen anything like it. Though I will say that when you bring your congressman online and do calls with your members or send that invitation out, we have had a lot of hospitality industry participants. One of them, John Dillon with Grand Canyon River Guides, was saying, independent contractors, and we have contracts with the National Park Service and Bureau of Land Management, all these intricate types of questions that all of a sudden are needs that chambers know how to navigate. And so we've been very happy and very humbled that we're able to provide, again, connecting the dots, understanding the pain, directing to resources. And Glenn, I believe I heard today that the payroll protection program also has been extended for independent contractors and small businesses, 1 to 4 employees. So we're directing everyone there. Of course, the hotels on I-40, on 70, they're all really hurting. Restaurants are a big part of our community, but we really feel that we'll be back to business soon. I'm encouraged by some of the numbers we see nationally. Yeah. I'm encouraged by the Navajo Nation being very proactive and a blockade in place for this weekend. That's going to make a big difference. We're just in the center of it. Whatever we can do, wherever we can go, we're here for them. That's our message. We're calling our members one-on-one check-ins. We've got probably 70% of those called. That's more than 700 because our total base is over 1,000.
Joe, touch on the Grand Canyon aspect as well, but also in March, you had some really nice snowfalls, but you couldn't take advantage of it at Snow Bowl. I know you pay a lot of attention to this sector.
Yeah, so the Snow Bowl is a $50 million, that's the Arizona Snow Bowl, which is our ski resource center just north of town, a $50 million economic impact locally on average to us, and had 38 inches of fresh powder between Tuesday and Wednesday, and they closed Tuesday at 4 o'clock this third week of March, which was right in the heart of spring break, by the way, which is a target for them to have folks from all over the state come and get some great bluebird skiing and some fresh powder at the best mountain in Arizona, and of course the highest peak. So a little bit of heartburn there for everybody in town because their impact is so wide with us in our community, as Julie mentioned, restaurants and hotels. The Grand Canyon is a little bit of a different apple, Garrick, in that there's really a couple pieces of facets to that. Everybody thinks about the national park, which of course is critical as it sees millions of guests. And we're heading into that time when we have and see an uptick in visitation to the Grand Canyon. So the closure there is a tough one to stomach right now, but we understand that we've got a couple of weeks to get through a national health problem, and then we'll be back open. But beyond that, rather than a national park, Department of Interior controls the river. And we have an entire river running industry that books river trips, and they typically start the 1st of April and they run through the middle of the summer. And that's a very lucrative industry, and it employs a lot of people to support that industry. And it draws a lot of tourism in, and then there's residual impacts on the local economy from those visitors once, either prior to getting on a river boat and after getting on the river boat, they spend time and money in the community. So we've lost a good chunk of that locally, and that's a concern for us. And of course, Interior Department controls the access to the river. And so we're sensitive to our members who have river running operations and the impacts of those. And we're trying to manage this and navigate through this difficult time.
Glenn, this is a supersized, extra large episode, so let's let these guys get back to saving the jobs in Northern Arizona. Why don't you close us out and thank our guests?
Well, I want to thank Julie and Joe for everything that you do for leading the way, not just in Flagstaff, but in the state. And we're going to get to the other side of this. And sooner rather than later, we're going to be back up at the chamber for our environmental summit and back to regular programming. But thank you for visiting with us this evening.
Thank you, Glenn.
Thank you.
Thank you both.